Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. You're watching Better for America, presented by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. Returning to the show today is Tim Stewart, the president of U.S. Oil and Gas Association. Tim, thanks for being back with me today.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me back on.
Now, Tim, you're the president of the U.S. Oil and Gas Association. Can you remind our listeners a little bit about your association and who you represent?
Sure. U.S. Oil and Gas Association is the nation's oldest oil and gas trade association. We were formed in 1917 during the Great War, designed to coordinate the supply of petroleum to aid the war effort. Over the years, over the decades, we've evolved. We represent primarily the independent oil and gas producers, the family-owned companies. It's frankly the companies that really do their hard work. They're the ones who take the big risks and go out and put a lot of money on the table to try and find oil and gas in the United States. Great companies, family-owned companies, small mom-and-pop shops to publicly traded companies. But we really do represent a great cross-section of the industry, both onshore and offshore.
Very good. Now, I do want to ask you a question that we've heard from AMAC membership. We see the Biden administration has been waging war against American energy independence. And now we see these conflicts going on in countries like Ukraine and now Israel. How do those conflicts and the war in Israel further impact, how might that further impact American energy, both production and costs?
You know, I get asked that question a lot, and I think a lot about that. You know, oil is a global commodity. And in the United States, we are largely energy independent in that we produce more oil than any other country, and we're able to export some of that. The challenge, though, is that being a global commodity, we are still subject to the global prices. And so whenever there's a disruption, say in Israel last week, you know, in the Middle East, or elsewhere in Ukraine, for example, American consumers feel the pinch of that because it is a globally priced commodity. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to have plenty of oil and gas supply here for the United States. And the challenge that we've had over the last 2.5 years is the Biden administration has made things very, very difficult for domestic U.S. producers. They've made it very clear that they are not happy with the use of fossil fuels in the United States. And so they've made efforts to constrain the production of that and also constrain the use of fossil fuels. That's why you see them going after things like gas stoves. But the challenge is that in a global commodity, in a global price environment, whenever there's a hiccup, if the supply and the production are tight in the United States, the American consumers feel that as well. So we watch global events very, very carefully throughout the course of every single day as to what happens, because the global markets respond accordingly, and the U.S. markets react to that as well.
Thank you. Now, the Biden administration, we know that they've sold off more than 40% of the strategic petroleum reserve in the last year, I think, to elude Americans into thinking that Biden is trying to help them. But how damaging are these decisions, not just in the short term, but in the long term?
Well, it's like anything, you know, you and I run our household budgets, and we always try and make sure that we've got some cash reserve on hand just in case an emergency comes up. And the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in the United States, and other countries have them as well, is designed to, it was created in the 1970s when we were subject to the Arab oil embargo. It was designed to protect American consumers and industry from massive price shocks or supply disruptions due to global events or to local events like a hurricane or a refinery outage or something like that. And that was designed to be able to put into the system in a very quick way, in a short-term way, supply, which then would be able to be refined and moved out to the consumers. That's why the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is located so closely to the major refining and pipeline infrastructure in the United States. What the Biden administration did, though, was rather than use it as an insurance policy against a global disruption in supply, they used it as frankly, as a political security. So it's a strategic political reserve for them when prices were high during getting to the midterm election. And they sold off more than half of it. We're now down to, you know, theoretically, if everything were to happen, shut down, we'd have 17 days of supply right now. And that's very concerning. But again, it's like you and I have our household budget. We always keep some in reserve in case emergencies come up, and that's what the SPR was. But that's been drawn down for political reasons rather than policy or global events.
Do you believe that we can return oil prices and production to where we were in 2018? Could a competent government handle that, or would there be a struggle to turn this around?
Well, that's again a question that I got into an argument on social media with an oil analyst last week on this particular issue. I had mentioned the fact that refilling the strategic petroleum reserve, despite our high production numbers in the United States, is going to be very, very difficult because not only is our supply growing, but the demand is growing equally as fast. And so Congress and the administration have to make a decision when and where do they pull oil out of the market to put into the strategic petroleum reserve. It has a big impact and it becomes very expensive. It's really expensive to try and refill it at $85 a barrel versus $40 or $35 a barrel where it was in 2018. I do think, Greg, I think that we can get, the prices will come down eventually so long as we have policies in place that allow for robust production and robust exploration in the United States. We don't have that right now. But if we had a new administration that came in and said, look, fossil fuel security is important, it reduces energy poverty, it reduces scarcity, and it ensures that American economy can run, Wall Street would pick up on that. And I imagine that you'd see production numbers go even higher than they are now. But also I think you'd see, because those numbers go higher, the prices come down because there's more supply in the system, and that impacts consumers. Our biggest problem is we don't want prices so high that nobody can afford our product. And particularly when it comes to moderate income families, the retirees, for example. We all make two decisions every week. We make a decision to go to the grocery store. We make a decision to put gasoline in our car. And those are the two most tangible economic impacts that we see every single week. And it's in my industry's interest to make sure that people can afford what we do. And that's why I push so hard back that we don't have policies that are helping us do that right now.
I mean, it does seem like every decision made by this administration has been the wrong one, and it's hurting the American people. Am I correct in saying that if the current administration did care about the environment truly, that it would be beneficial to drill domestically and refine the light crude oil that we have here versus buying barrels of dark crude, which is more difficult to refine from foreign countries? Is that
Absolutely.
common sense?
Yeah, no, that's 100% common sense. A couple challenges with that, and you sort of piqued a comment that I had read a week or two ago. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates made a comment about Joe Biden. He said that he's been on the wrong side of every national security and international policy in the last 40 years. We see that reflected in his energy policy right now. It's so interesting to see that the Biden administration come after my industry when we produce oil and gas in the cleanest way possible, but for cleaner than anywhere else in the world, and come after us and lean so hard on us for methane and emissions when we've reduced our emissions by 40 or 50% over the last few years, and then turn right around and reach out to Venezuela, which without a doubt flares more and produces more dirty oil than anybody else by a multiple factor of 10 by the end of the producers, and say, please produce more oil so we can import it. That makes absolutely no sense. We do have a challenge. We've still got to invest in our refinery systems to make sure that they can refine that light crude that Texas is producing and New Mexico is producing versus bringing in from Venezuela or other partners. And again, this administration who seems, in my opinion, to be on the wrong side of every energy policy since they came into office.
AMAC members, they understand this, and they're scratching their heads, not knowing why the administration is choosing to ignore these facts. Based on your knowledge, Tim, do you believe that this administration is incompetent, or are they intentionally punishing the American people? What do you think is behind the why they're doing this?
We've been scratching our heads for 2.5 years on that. At first, we sort of chalked it up to, well, they're new, they've got new policy people in place. And then we went to they're making some really incompetent decisions. And now I think we've all resolved the fact that not only are they're not just incompetent, this is intentional. There's no way you can put policies in place like this just on accident over and over and over again. This is intentional from day one. And they've made it very clear, honestly, that there is no, in their energy policy, there is no room for fossil fuels. but their energy policy creates energy poverty. And you and I talked about this last time. When you create scarcity like this with no replacement in place to come in behind, then you're creating energy poverty for millions and millions of low and moderate income families. Again, this impacts retirees. It impacts young families. People have to make those decisions day in and day out. And it's heartbreaking, to be honest with you, to see how they not have they risen to their level of incompetence, they now have risen to their level of intentional incompetence. And that's really disturbing, and should be disturbing for all of us.
I know many of our members are looking forward to the 2024 election, and they're hoping that whoever might be, eventually win, and we're hoping that we see some better policy making in the executive branch. What do you think we can expect in the lead up to the 2024 election regarding these issues, and how important will this issue be for anyone running for president?
When I started on Capitol Hill 30 years ago, energy was not particularly a partisan issue. It was geographic, in terms that if there was a oil and gas producing state like Texas or Louisiana or Oklahoma, there were Democrats there who voted for that. And what we've witnessed over the last 30 years is that along with that geographic realignment of the political parties, the energy has become more partisan. And it used to be that I could count on 10 or 15 Democrats to vote on a bill on Capitol Hill with the oil and gas industry, but the alignment has forced that down to just a handful, primarily of Texas Democrats. I think it would be great if this next election cycle were to cause a realignment on energy policy. And I'd love to be able to count 15 or 20 or 30 Democrats who could vote with us. I can't help but wax hopeful that because energy is such a pocketbook issue, that regardless of the outcome of the election, as voters vote on those pocketbook issues, that they bring in members of Congress from both sides to vote for energy, for oil and gas. And that will send a clear message. I'd love to see a change in an administration, absolutely. I think most of us would from our industry. But I'd love to be able to see a realignment where members of Congress are voting for pocketbook issues and supporting energy and reducing scarcity and reducing energy poverty versus climate and things like that.
Tim, thank you so much. So important, this issue, to all of our great AMAC members listening in, and thank you so much for bringing clarity. We here do hope and pray for better leadership. We know that America is should be energy independent. We saw that under Donald J. Trump. We hope to see that again in the future. Tim Stewart, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you.
Today's episode is sponsored by Emergency Assistance Plus. Now, your membership with EA Plus provides you with an extra layer of protection anytime you travel. Whether you're thousands of miles away or on a short road trip away from home, you'll have peace of mind should a medical emergency arise. EA Plus membership gives you access to a team of highly skilled professionals, and they will ensure that you receive proper medical care and get fast and reliable transportation home. Get that extra layer of protection anytime you travel. Become an EA Plus member today. Call EA Plus at 800-445-3575 or visit emergencyassistanceplus.com/BFA podcast.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.